And I lost. There we go.
You're watching National Streaming Sports. Over 20 podcasts, 70 shows, and a 3.5-star rating on Roku TV.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Good morning, everybody. How is everybody doing today? I want to welcome you to the Friday edition of the Mac and Jack Show. Mac is still laid up a bit, but recovering from what we understand. Hopefully we'll see Mac back in this seat soon, and I'll be able to move into the back seat again. But I'm with Mac's everyday co-host for, like 50 years now, Jack Hirsch. How are you, Jack?
Hey, good. You know what you remind me of, Keith? The interim manager. Mac just got kicked out of the game, but he's not letting you call your own plays of strategy. He's sending in messages from the clubhouse. You're in the dugout. Billy Martin used to do that when he got kicked out of the games. You know, Mac kind of does it a little bit in his own way. But we miss Mac, you know. Can't wait till he comes back.
We do miss Mac. I mean, we've done the best we can do, but Mac has a unique way of running the show and pushing buttons, and I haven't been able to do that. So.
Well, don't underestimate yourself. You're top of the line too, Keith.
I appreciate that. I'm better at getting my buttons pushed than actually pushing buttons, but that's fine. We have a lot of fun while we're doing it, and I've enjoyed doing it with you the last couple of weeks, but we hope Mac gets back as soon as he can and is healthy at the same time. So we're thinking about you all the time. Jack and Linda, appreciate the updates, and I know it's been hard for you as well. And good morning to Rick Sherlock. He's out here as well. Jack, we'll get into a few topics today. We'll talk some NFL. Last night's game, a little sloppy. I know you didn't get to see a lot of it, but a little sloppy. The Browns beat the Steelers. The Steelers, you think they're, starting to really turn a corner, and you get beat by one of the worst teams you would think in football, but Nick Chubb back. Pickens and some Steelers pointing fingers at the weather. You can't lose a team like the Browns. Well, I agree with the second part. Browns aren't any good. They just kicked your butt. Just don't say they're no good.
Well, last night I was at the Atlas Foundation banquet in Staten Island. Stephen A. Smith was there. Dan Hurley, the great UConn coach, was there. The actor Tony Danza was there. Sports broadcasters, Brian Kenny, Bob Papa were there, Larry Holmes, Michael Spinks, amongst the boxers. So all I could do is really basically go to my phone, catch updates and this and that. I picked the Steelers, but something bothered me about the game. We hear the term, Keith, trap game. And this was a true trap game. The Steelers coming off like an emotional win over the Baltimore Ravens last Sunday, a hard-fought game. The Browns performing miserably Sunday against the Saints, and they've had a bad year. But then Cleveland, the weather's bad, and you wonder whether the Browns are going to show up, whether their defense is going to show up, how much Myles Garrett is going to show up, and they showed up.
The short weeks, people, I think, dismiss that too much, right? Especially, as you said, coming off an emotional win. I think it's worse for a team like that than it is for the Browns, who are maybe they're playing out the string, maybe they're not. But I think it's an advantage for a team like the Browns on a short week like that.
Well, home field could sometimes be overestimated in the NFL, but sometimes when you're coming off a bad loss and you're playing as poorly as the Browns on you at home, your fans kind of push you. They want you to do well. The conditions were miserable yesterday, but the Browns, they came ready to win. I mean, I don't want to say a season is over for any team. I believe the games always mean something, even if you're out of the playoff hunt, because you can have a certain pride. I think back to when we were kids, we wanted to win games. There were no standings. There were no playoffs.
Right.
And if the players have that mindset, I just want to win the game. I don't care what's at stake. I just want to win, and I'm going to show up. I'm going to compete. And if you're a competitor, that's what you do.
Yeah, as a fan, I don't ever want to see my team lose. I'm upset. I get so mad about tanking talk and all this stuff. If you're a fan,
No one
of a
can.
team to lose,
No
you're not
one
really a
can.
fan, Are you?
Coaches, an organization might tank. A coaching staff can tank by playing lesser players like the Eagles did, a few years ago with the division at stake, with the Giants and all. They kind of tanked it against Washington in a way, but that was a coaching staff thing. They got a little bit of a higher draft choice, but the players themselves, they don't tank it. They're not doing any worse, because if they're that bad to begin with, chances are they're going to get cut. So what do they care about the team's future 5-10 years down the line?
Yeah, and as a fan, have you ever rooted? As a Jet fan, you've had a lot of opportunity to do this. But have you ever rooted for them to lose? I have never rooted for my team to lose. Never.
No, in the Jet history, 2 seasons stand out in my mind. Not as the 2 biggest seasons, obviously, but I remember them in the Jet history. One year with Joe Namath, they were 1-7. And they won their last 6 games with 7-7. And I was very proud. We won our last 6 games. The other season under Bill Parcells, we were 2-8, and we won our last 6 games, and we were 8-8. And I remember those years. I took something away from those seasons. It doesn't have to be a championship necessarily to take something away from a season. But in this day and age, the mindset is, well, how many championships have you won? Because outside of that, nothing counts for anything else. With that, I didn't mean to give you a dig. You with the New York Yankees, Keith. That wasn't intended. This is strictly football talk.
Yankees and Patriots, we've gotten a little spoiled, so I understand the comment for sure. Sometimes we forget. Yes, the games are still fun, and it's still fun to watch your team. Maybe not be 1-16, but be competitive. And that's why. I'll change the subject just a little bit. I know I was against Drake May playing this year. Well, I was wrong, because even though they're not winning a lot more games, they did win a game, but they're more, at least the games are watchable and they're enjoyable. There's some fun there. I hope he doesn't get hurt.
Well, before the show, we were going over a few potential topics that we could talk about. And what didn't come up, and shame on us, this should have been, top of the list just about. Robert Kraft again being snubbed for the Hall of Fame. He's not a finalist again. This is ludicrous. I mean, is he a disliked owner? I mean, do they resent him? I mean, what possible reason? Jerry Jones is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me that Jerry Jones is a more accomplished owner than Robert Kraft, a more accomplished football guy?
No. His team might be worth more money. That's the only thing. That's it. Is that accomplishing something in the NFL? No.
I mean, I don't get it with Robert Kraft. And the guy he got bypassed for, I forgot his name, some guy from 100 years ago with the Canton Bulldogs or something. And Robert Kraft is alive. He can enjoy this. And they dug this guy's name up otherwise. I'm not saying the person, and I forgot his name, I'm sorry, isn't worthy of getting in, a real old timer from 100 years or so ago. I'm not saying that at all. But Robert Kraft can enjoy this, and most importantly, he deserves it. I can understand the debate about Eli Manning, who I think should be in the Hall of Fame. I can understand that debate. I can respect that debate. But Robert Kraft should be a no-brainer.
I've never understood the Football Hall of Fame, and their whole process anyway is kind of ridiculous in my mind, where you've got to have, you name 100 guys and you cut down to X amount, then you cut down to X amount, then you cut down to X amount, and then we have to pick between 5 and 9 guys. Well, why do you have to pick any, number one? And why do you have to go through this extensive process, number two? And I didn't see the cut down list, so I appreciate you bringing that up for sure. As far as Bob Kraft goes, I don't get it. Somebody's got something against Bob Kraft somewhere, and maybe it's in a massage parlor in Florida, but there's a lot worse guys.
No, I don't even mention that. That's got nothing to do with anything. He didn't get in before that, and I don't like to make jokes about that. Robert Kraft.
I don't understand what they're thinking about. Is my point.
Yeah.
Possibly can you hold against Robert Kraft?
And he's alive, and like I said, and they're digging someone up who hasn't been under serious consideration all these years, and all of a sudden they're digging him up at the expense of Robert Kraft. I mean, foolhardy.
I got to look up the list before I do my show Sunday, because there was a couple guys on there I have great interest in. Bob Kraft was one. Chuck Foreman's another one who Rick Sherlock I know will appreciate.
Foreman, yeah. You know what hurt Chuck Foreman, Keith? They didn't win the Super Bowl. The Vikings went to 4. I'm not sure whether he was with them for all 4. Was he with them for 3 of them or whatever? But Chuck Foreman was an outstanding running back. I mean, think of Chuck Foreman today. If he was around today, he would be one of the best running backs in the NFL.
Absolutely. Top 5 for sure.
Nicknamed the Spin Doctor.
Yeah, and I'll get to the comments. I see Linda there in a second. Well, I'm on Chuck Foreman. One of the best interviews I did. I interviewed Chuck Foreman on my show, and we got talking about the Hall of Fame, and he said, I don't understand the process. And I asked him the question that was kind of like, you remember the movie A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson in that famous courtroom scene? And I asked him, I said, do you think you belong in the Hall of Fame? He says, you're goddamn right I do.
Well, sometimes we assume someone's going to get in and they're not. Jerry Kramer, great guard with the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
It took him until he was 78 years old to get in, maybe because other Packers were getting in. So Roger Goodell didn't know Jerry Kramer wasn't in the Hall of Fame, and he sees him. This is before Jerry Kramer got in the Hall of Fame. He says, how come you're never there? Hall of Fame weekend with Hall of Famers. And Jerry Kramer says, well, because I'm not in the Hall of Fame. And Goodell was like shocked. It was like just an assumption.
Yeah.
Jerry Kramer's in the Hall of Fame. Eventually he got in. You know, like Gil Hodges took him forever. You know, he had passed away long before that.
A lot of guys.
But, you know, sometimes you wonder, you know, certain players, and it's not necessarily their popularity, because Gil Hodges, Jerry Kramer were very, very popular. But it took him forever to get in.
Rick always brings up Jim Marshall, and Jim Marshall's longevity helps him. But I think the guys he played with hurt him, his candidacy, because he played with two of the greatest linemen in the history of football, and Page and Eller. That might hurt him as well. But Rick wants to know if you played against the guy that beat out Robert Kraft in high school.
Well, Robert Kraft, too, is a pioneer, the way he got the stadium in New England, not just a question of the team winning and losing.
Yeah.
You know, and he's been a force on the league committees and everything. And he's done all this charity work. He's done all this stuff away from the field. What the heck is it?
All these Hall of Fames. All these Hall of Fames have lost sight. And I don't spend the whole time talking about the Hall of Fame, but all these teams, they've lost sight of what they really ought to be looking at, I think, you know?
Well, sometimes, Keith, any honor, we should wonder, what does it really mean? For example, the Cowboy Ring of Honor. They kept talking about how important was it for Jimmy Johnson to get in, and it meant a lot to Jimmy Johnson to get in. So good that he got in. It means a lot to other players, but when you think of it, it's a one-man vote. Jerry Jones. So what does the Ring of Honor mean? It's Jerry. It's Jerry's Ring of Honor, basically. It's not like a bunch of, people, who could really analyze their career, who have the expertise. It's a one-guy thing. I'd love someone to have an attitude. Who gives a darn? It's Jerry's Ring of Honor. I don't care whether I get in or not.
Excellent. Speaking of Linda, Linda's here. Good morning. We're doing awesome, and Mac and herself couldn't ask for agreed a group to help us out during all of this. And Mac is doing much better. We're glad to hear that. And, he can't wait to be back, I'm sure, was the next comment. And she also mentioned back in the game, Roku updated 12.5. Update. That's their our subscribers, 12,000 subscribers. Great job, guys. Continue to get out there and download those Roku channel apps. It's a lot of content, man. Outside of this show and the shows I do, there's just hours and hours of content every day. So check it out.
Well, if Mac were here, he'd tell someone about all the shows, and this is what they could do for the day. Just stay in and watch all the shows.
You can, but I got a job, unfortunately.
That's it.
Ralph Williams from RW Media. Good morning, Ralph. Ralph probably not happy with the result last night. Ralph, get on 9 o'clock, do a rant. You can do a rant on my 9 o'clock show.
Steeler fan.
Big Steeler fan.
Okay.
Ralph's in Pittsburgh, and he's all things Pittsburgh. So,
Jameis Winston was at it again. Jameis Winston, you wonder is Cleveland going to move forward with him next year as the starting quarterback? I believe he's going to be a free agent, but he's not going to be in big demand anywhere at all. And they're still stuck with Deshaun Watson's contract for a couple of years. So if I'm Cleveland, maybe that's the way to go. Just name Jameis Winston the starter, or maybe let there be a little bit of a competition and hope, even though I doubt if it's going to happen now, that Deshaun Watson can recapture his old magic. I mean, if you talk about, Keith, any player in the NFL who is damaged goods, okay, you think in terms of Deshaun Watson, but you wonder how much is physical and how much is mental. We don't know how all this is affecting him. And I don't want to hear, well, he brought it on himself. That's not the issue I'm talking about, whether he has or hasn't. How do you concentrate on football with all this going on? And when Cleveland signed him from a football perspective, I thought it was a good move. And I'm not talking about the morality thing, whether they should or shouldn't. I'm not touching that issue. He was an elite quarterback with Houston, elite. And they could have been getting one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. So I thought it was a bold move that was worth it from a football perspective. And he's been bad from a football perspective. Now, you can argue that he hasn't had a great deal of weapons that they took away, or players have been hurt, or this or that, but he was bad. So, but what do you do with Cleveland next year going forward? Jameis Winston is erratic. He could be excellent or he could be terrible.
I'm going to eat Watson's contract and myself, and we won't get into it a lot today. I don't think you can have the conversation without bringing the rest of it into it. The Cleveland Browns brought this on themselves. Maybe Deshaun Watson did as well, but the Browns brought this on themselves. They didn't have to do what they did. They went out on a limb. They wrecked the entire quarterback market and drove and they have nobody to blame but themselves.
Keith, the way you say so easily, I'm just going to eat the contract. Let's make believe you own a company and you sign someone from out of town to come in and you give them a 5-year contract to work in your company, and you give them really big, you make them your highest paid employee, okay? Highest paid.
Sure.
And after 3 years, they're just not doing the job. Not that they're dogging it. They're trying, but their production is bad. But you're getting something out of it. Are you just going to say, I'll pay you for the next 2 years, go away? You're going to try to still get something out of them.
Sweeping floors. No, I'm going to fire the guy.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, backup, even third string. I mean, you keep him on the roster if you got to pay him. Pay him his money and get rid of him.
We'd have to look into what the cap hit is and everything, because it's not always what it seems to be, right? So we have to kind of look at that. But that's a topic we can get into another day.
Rick Sherlock. Yeah. This is with Jerry Kramer.
Yeah.
This called my good remark. Rick Kramer was the best induction speech I ever heard. No bitterness or anger. He went in with Randy Moss, and I was there. A good one, Rick. Jerry Kramer, before he got in the Hall of Fame, they'd ask him about it. And he said, I'm never going to ask a push to get in the Hall of Fame. That it wasn't a style. It would have to come naturally. Some guys push and they argue for it and they want to get in so bad. They have other people advocate for them. But Jerry Kramer always had a laid-back approach. He never acted like it wasn't an injustice, but it had to be a little frustrating.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Yeah, not to get it, and he deservedly so. If I tell you that, if I had to name, Keith, the greatest single individual plays in NFL history, are the most important single plays in NFL history, I can make an argument Bart Starr's quarterback sneak to win the NFL championship game with Jerry Kramer's block, or the most important block in NFL history. Most important block. Jerry Kramer.
Yeah, you can make an argument for that. A lot of people would argue the giant Colt overtime game which moved it into the TV era, really.
Block, the most important block. Single block someone made in the history of the NFL.
Great
Jerry
player.
Kramer's block on Jethro Pugh, where he lifted him up slightly so Bart Starr could go underneath the quarterback sneak.
Yeah, that's a good one. And he's a classy individual. He's got I can't remember the name of his book, but he's got a really good book out. And his speed.
Instant replay.
Right. Instant replay. Thank you. And Kramer, that he did give a very classy speech that night as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, that game was in the worst elements weather-wise in the history of the NFL. The Ice Bowl.
For sure. At least Rick Berry today. Rick Berry's gone and ghosted me again. So
Rick Berry.
For an interview, and he's kind of Rick Berry. He spelled it wrong. Barry. Rick Berry.
Rick.
Yeah. So we're still working on him. We got just, and I'll talk about it.
Let me tell you what Rick Barry. He's might come on your show, Rick Barry.
He's we're negotiating now. Yes.
Great player, one of the best foul shooters in the history of the NBA. Yeah. Great player. But I'll tell you, to show you the way social media, a way things have changed socially, he got himself traded in a way that if he did it today, he would have been not allowed to play again in the NBA. Well, he was in the ABA, actually. He didn't want to play for the Virginia Squires of the ABA. So he imitated the way people in Virginia might talk. And he says, I don't want my kids growing up talking like this. No. Can you imagine someone doing that today?
Rick Berry
imagine that?
Yeah, Rick Berry wasn't always the most amiable person to not understand either. But we're looking forward to having Rick on the show, and we'll get him. We're talking to Rick, Artis Gilmore, June Jones. I got Billy Sample booked for a couple of weeks from now. We got some really good names that we're trying to get out here.
Yeah. That is nice, Keith. Keep it going for you.
It's hard to get them in, man. It's been a little while, and we're in a rut right now, but we'll get there. So thanks for bringing that up, Rick. So at 9:00, it's the rant show. Everybody call in. I'll give you your 5 minutes. Before we get off the NFL, again, I think this is probably a good loss for the Steelers. If there are good losses, it gives them a little time to reset and before the playoffs start. The Browns, I guess, a good psychological win. Nick Chubb comes back, has a pretty productive game, 2 touchdowns, doesn't get hurt, which is a good thing. And sloppy football, those 7 turnovers, you can blame the weather. We can blame the short week. I don't know what you want to blame, but this is the NFL today with short weeks and more days being covered. Next week, we got a Friday game as well on Black Friday, first one ever. So,
well, it's an important, I don't know as far as any loss to say, well, it's a good loss, so on. These games come back to haunt you because it was a very winnable game for Pittsburgh. Even though they came from behind, it was the type of game they expected to win. The way Cleveland has been playing. And they still got to hold off the Ravens when all is said and done.
Yeah.
And I know they beat them last week. And the Ravens might not lose another game this year. So now this might put Pittsburgh under a lot of pressure. I'm not saying the Ravens are going to run the table. I'm just saying they're good enough to run the table conceivably.
Well, when I say good loss, sometimes, and we never know whether it's a good loss till later on anyway, because if it wakes you up and it's good to get a reset, but we don't know. You're right.
They won 5 in a row, so they would do for a little bit of a bump. I don't regard the Steelers as a serious Super Bowl contender. That's just me.
I don't.
I think they've got a great coach, Russell Wilson. He's played well. He's managed the game. They have an elite defense, but you never know if everything falls into place. They could get there, but I'm not overly optimistic about them going to the Super Bowl.
Before I move on from the NFL, I want to talk about, and then we'll talk about the context of the fight last week. And we can talk about the fight for a few minutes if you want. I mean, I knew it was going to be a joke. It was a joke. But outside of the fight itself, Netflix's production of this thing, yes, they had buffering issues because they didn't expect to get 70 million people. What were they thinking they were going to get? There was problems with the buffering. The production itself was awful. The people they had, in my mind, in running the show, and the announcers, I guess the fight announcers, you could judge them better than I can, but just the people involved in producing this whole thing, in front of the camera, behind the camera, I thought it was, I don't want to say amateurish, but it was not good. And the NFL, who's got two big games, Netflix played $150 million for these two games on Christmas Day. The NFL, and I know they had a conversation with Netflix this week, they've got to be concerned about what's going to happen Christmas Day.
Yeah, during the show itself, I was losing the picture. The picture would become blurry. Everything was out of whack. And I thought it was something in my area where I occasionally have a problem. I say, darn it, of all times, what's with this area, this place I'm living here? And I'm getting annoyed. My son-in-law is over. Then he went to Twitter and he saw a bunch of people complaining all over the United States. And especially the female fight, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano. That was a highly anticipated fight, for hardcore boxing fans. That was about the best female fight that could be made. And I can't watch a round and a half, meaning I can't score the fight anymore. When it's all is said and done, I no longer have a scorecard.
Right.
Because there are 2 rounds I couldn't score the fight that I couldn't see. And it's blurry the rest, on and off. And but the good thing about Netflix is, a lot of people have Netflix. It's not like pay-per-view. It's not like Amazon, Prime, which so many people don't have, for example. And it's not like NBC's Peacock, which most people don't have. They want to charge a fee. So the Paul Tyson was good in the sense that you didn't have to, pay anything for, but they had all this time to prepare and have their production. And you said it best, Keith. What did they expect? I mean, all these people, the millions and millions, they should have been able to anticipate.
They absolutely should have. And yeah, I mean, we say it's free, but it's not free. They're paying for it. And they got a lot of new subscribers because of this fight. That's why they had it. But this can't be. I mean, I don't think there's anybody involved with any of the other production crews. A lot of times, we see shared the NFL Network and the Thursday night games, for instance, used to have some shared production teams and whatnot. I don't think there's any of that with Netflix in their first foray here into the NFL. They're going to have their own announcers, their own producers, their own directors. I'm just really concerned what kind of...
Well, I think what the NFL should do with Netflix, give them a bunch of games that's worthy of their production. New England at Jacksonville, games like that. Give them a whole slate of games like that where people aren't going to get hyped up.
I think there's some pretty good games that day, too. So, I mean, there's be a lot of people interested in these games. So they better get it together.
Well, wait. They're starting Netflix this season?
Yeah, Christmas Day.
I wasn't aware of that. Somehow it was in my mind next season. Christmas Day. So what game do they have?
Let me pull it up here quick. They have December 25th. Wednesday, December 25th. Kansas City at Pittsburgh. Baltimore at Houston.
That's a good game. Good game.
Two good games. 1:00 and 4:30. Christmas Day.
Yeah, 2 games.
Yeah.
What's the other game?
Baltimore at Houston.
Wow.
They can't afford to screw this up.
There are going to be so many people watching Christmas Day because the people that celebrate Christmas and are going to have family over, they're going to have the TV sets on
Sure.
Even if the sound is off, the TV sets are going to be on. And could you imagine a blurry picture going in and out?
Or just spinning, the wheel spinning at
Spinning the wheel.
99
Oh,
for an
man.
hour and a
But can
half.
you imagine it happens late in the game, or the game's on the line, or they miss a touchdown? It's
Just could be Netflix first and last day having the NFL, because they want to be involved in the future more heavily, like Prime, but they paid $150 million, $75 million each for these games, and if they don't pull this off, I don't think the NFL is going back there. But we'll see. Let's move on from the NFL. Let's go to the MLB. A big week in the fact that all the major awards were announced: MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year. No big surprises, I don't think, in the Cy Young and MVP votings. In fact, 3 of them were unanimous in Judge, Ohtani for the MVPs, and Google for the Cy Young, and then Chris Sale. I think Chris Sale is one of the great comeback stories, maybe in recent MLB, if not sports history, because we'd written them off. He wins the Cy Young in the National League. I was a little surprised Judge was unanimous, because I thought Bobby Witt or maybe even Soto might siphon off a couple of first place votes, but he didn't. They didn't. What are your thoughts here, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Bobby Witt was going to come in second. I thought he would get some votes. I thought Judge deserved it, but I thought Witt would contend somewhat. He had an exceptional year. Juan Soto, too, you would think would get a couple of votes. Bobby Witt got all the second place votes, too, I believe. So Soto didn't get any first or second place votes. Now, I wonder, was this taken into consideration? Soto was hitting in front of Judge. So he was getting pitches to hit. In the playoffs, it was a little different. They challenged Judge a little more, and they pitched carefully to Soto, because Judge wasn't at that point of the season when it was hot. But I'll tell you, when Judge had all cylinders going for a couple of months, no one would have pitched around Soto to get to Judge. If anything, if you gave them a choice who they wanted to pitch to, they would have said, let us pitch to Soto instead of Judge. That's how invincible Judge was for a couple of months. But Judge deserved it. This is his second one. And if it wasn't for the controversy with Houston without Altuve, with the sign stealing, some people even feel Judge should have had 3. But sometimes you wonder with Aaron Judge, would the real Aaron Judge show up? The Aaron Judge who John Carlos Stanton said, the rest of us are playing baseball, he's playing video games. That's how good he was, about half the season. And then the Judge who's there for the playoffs, he wasn't terrible in the playoffs. He was so-so, which isn't good enough.
Yeah, he had too many big spots where he was bad, though. So overall, bad in big spots. But he wore down as the season went on. I've had this argument with Mac a couple of times. He thinks playing center field is not that big a deal. It is a big deal. You're covering a lot more ground. You've got a lot more responsibility out there. And I do think playing there day after day after day, especially with a big body like Judge's, has an effect. And I think he wore down over the course of the season. I think it's important that the Yankees address that, and they need a center fielder, whether Soto comes back or doesn't come back. They need a center fielder, and they've got to move Soto and Judge around in left and right field, however they feel is best aligned. But I think it's important he doesn't play center field next year.
Yankees have more holes than any World Series team I can remember.
Agree.
They need a first baseman. They need either a third baseman or second baseman, because Chaz Chisholm is going to either stay at third or move to second. They need one or another. So they need 2 infielders, the first baseman and the second baseman, third baseman. They're going to need another outfielder, maybe 2 out. Well, the Juan Dominguez is going to get a shot to play full time, okay? So they need 1 outfielder.
The defense is going to be a big thing with Dominguez. He gets a shot if he shows he can use the glove.
Well, he's going to have to. They're going to have to put him out there. But if they lose Soto, which I anticipate happening, I hate to say it, because they're not playing with monopoly money. There gets to a point where enough is enough. So they're going to need an outfielder too, okay? Someone to get they're going to need a closer. Yeah, I don't want to hear Luke Weaver. Let Luke Weaver be the primary middle reliever. They're going to lose Clay Holmes, and I wouldn't mind Clay Holmes coming back as a middle reliever. I really wouldn't mind that. Okay?
Pitch well in that role.
Right. But I'm not trusting Luke Weaver, even though he all in all was effective those few weeks or so. I think it's a mistake to trust him in that role. Get the best closer out there who's available, and have Luke Weaver join the mix if you want. But I'm going to say this: the Juan Soto situation's intriguing. Part of me says just move on from him. Don't pay that crazy money. You can't replace Juan Soto any way I look at it, Keith. That lineup is going to be hurting so badly. I don't care whether they sign, Burns and Blake Snell to their rotation next year. Without Soto, you're not going to score a lot of runs. It's imperative that they have him. That's what's bothering me about this whole negotiation. You can't live with him. You can't live without him.
Yeah.
You can't live with them for the amount of money you have to pay. That's what I mean.
And the Yankees haven't done a great job of bringing in free agents to fill some of the positions that we've talked about need, right? Third base, we bring in Josh Donaldson in a trade, but still didn't work out. They're focusing a little bit on Bregman now. I'm worried about
Bregman's not worth the money he's going to command. No.
Absolutely not. 100%. Soto did this week. There's 5 teams, maybe 6 left, according to Soto's camp, as finalists here. Yankees happen to be one. And Soto got one of the things this week that was really important to him. He hadn't had a sit down with Hal Steinbrenner, and he got it this week. And he has said that having a relationship with the owner is important to him. And until now, while he's enjoyed his time in New York, enjoyed the clubhouse, enjoyed the guys he played with, and the rest of management, he hadn't had a relationship with Hal Steinbrenner. They had a very, it appears, productive conversation in that regard. That may help the Yankees, but it's still going to come down to money. And I don't know if the Yankees, as much as they got deep pockets, here's my biggest problem, Jack. Hear me out real quick, too. It's not so much that I got to sign him for whatever, $60 million over 15 years. Just throw a number out there. The fact that he wants an out after 5 years, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that.
I would consider it in Soto's case because the Yankees have no leverage at all. None at all. And also the amount of money we're talking about, $50 million or whatever. David Cohn said something that stuck with me that was very interesting. After Judge signed his contract for $40 million a year, 9 years, $360 total, people are saying how enormous it is. David Cohn was saying, yeah, but years from now, it's going to go up the amount. It's not going to look like that much money. And guess what? We're going to be the 3rd year into the Judge contract and $40 million a year. It doesn't sound like such a massive amount anymore. Let's pretend Judge was a free agent now. Okay? He was a free agent. He has 7 more years left on his deal. We know there'd be a team out there that would very easily pay him, more than $40 million a year for 7 years to get him. You mean to tell me a team's wouldn't pay Judge $45 million a year for 7 years now? There's a good chance that would happen.
Sure.
But leaving money on the table, there's a difference involved. People don't realize Judge was offered an extra year, a 10-year deal where he signed a 9-year with San Diego. They offered him $41 million a year for 10 years, $410 million. He took the 9 years from the Yankees at 43 for 360. Judge actually left a total of $50 million on the table because he came up in the Yankee system and the Yankee legacy was so important to him. But talk about legacy. You know who's made a major blunder with Scott Boras. And Scott Boras is going to look good on the Judge thing. Scott Boras is aware of this. I mean, not to judge the Soto thing. Soto's going to sign a contract that might even top Ohtani's $700 million when all is said and done. Let's say $705 million or so total, 15 years, 14 years, or whatever the amount is. Yeah. And that's going to make, Scott Boras is a genius, this and that. But he screwed other guys up, even though I think he's an outstanding agent. Pete Alonso was offered 7 years, $158 million by the Mets. That's a little over $22.5 million a year. But Alonso thought he could get more money. Guess what? If he gets more money, it's only going to be slightly more, Keith, at best. And what Alonso did was screw up his legacy. He would have gotten all these Met records. He would have been a Met icon. And now if he goes to another team like the Washington Nationals, he loses that iconic status within the organization, having your number retired, having the records. It always drove me crazy. Andy Pettitte goes to Houston for 3 years. If he didn't go, he would have been the all-time winningest Yankee pitcher, and maybe that would have given him stronger consideration for the Hall of Fame.
He'd be in the Hall of Fame if he played with the Yankees his whole career.
They would have looked winningest pitcher in Yankee history. That would have been his calling card.
Yeah, I agree. Was he a Boris client?
No. But I could understand Pettitte going back to Houston. The Yankees hemmed and hawed. But I don't, Pete Alonso screwed it up. I would go back to the Mets and I'd beg, can I have the 7 years? And I'll take $8 million less at this point. I'll take even a little less, but I want to come back and get the records.
Oh, there's no guarantee Pete Alonso even gets 7 or 8 years now because we know Boris' track record.
Give him that much.
Look what happened. Now last year he gets he doesn't sign all those guys that were Boros guys last year. He played it out to the end and he cost all those guys money, every one of them.
And Blake Snell's a free agent again. He's opting out again. If he didn't get the big money coming up with Cy Young Award, he's not going to get it this year.
Nope.
Corbin Burns is the one pitcher I think will get the big money. Okay, one way or the other, I think he's the, number one pitcher, in the class. But you don't have to go that route if your team. Max Fried, Jack Flaherty, I like Jack Flaherty. You get him a lot cheaper. I hope he does wind up in the Yankee rotation.
We're going to disagree there. I'm not a big Jack Flaherty fan. But I like Fried.
I happen to like him.
I like Fried a lot, for sure. I like him. So, any other surprises here with Vogt getting the Manager of the Year and Murphy getting Manager of the Year? I think they're both certainly no big surprises there.
No, none at all. But that award doesn't get you any extra security. I was glad to see years ago Donnie Baseball get the award because he hasn't really won anywhere he's gone, and Don Mattingly, one of the great people in baseball, he's always came a little short. He took the Dodgers to some playoff runs. He got, with Miami in the shortened season, he got the Manager of the Year award. And I'm glad the guys who got it this year got it. I mean, they're deserving of it, like all in all.
How about Luis Gil? I mean, I was a little surprised. That was the closest vote, I think, of all of these was Luis Gil in the Rookie of the Year voting. Just beats out Colton Cowser of the Orioles by like 4 votes. I mean, all these guys had decent years. I thought Mason Miller actually should have won the award for the A's, but playing out there in anonymity in Oakland doesn't help you. But Gil was so up and down. I don't know what to expect from him going forward.
Yeah, he'll pitch against an everyday player, and you have a close vote. I mean, how do you distinguish the difference there? Well, he'll be in the Yankee rotation, but you're right. He started off great, then he was awful, and he got it together. But he'll be in their rotation next year, deservedly so.
He actually started off terribly. His control was awful. Then then he stepped up. Maybe a month into the season, May and June, he was like unhittable. And then he was throwing strikes, which was his big problem. He had trouble with his command early in the year and late in the year. And I hope this kid is as good as he was in the middle part of the year and not what he was at the beginning or the end. And the Yankees will have something there.
Yeah, you mentioned the Yankee rotation. We were talking free agents, and Garrett Cole could have become a free agent. And Garrett Cole, I think, wisely with his agents, didn't force the issue. The Yankees could have stopped him from becoming a free agent by adding a fifth year to his contract at $36 million a year. But hypothetically, had Cole opted out, or he was going to opt out and then changed his mind, and the Yankees said, "Okay, you could be here the 4 years. We'll pay you, but we're not adding the fifth right now. But we'll talk about it, down the line." If Cole opted out, I don't think anyone's giving him $36 million a year. Or maybe they would, but give him a 3-year deal or whatever. I just don't think he would have bettered himself. It would have been a big mistake for a guy who wants to be a Yankee. Certain players badly want to be with their teams, and somehow they miscalculate. Freddie Freeman, the blunder with Atlanta turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah,
Blessing in disguise. He loved it at Atlanta. But now you look back, he's got a great legacy with the Dodgers. He's going to be a Dodger for life and a Brave for life. And you look at certain of these great players who want to stay with a team for their career, but circumstances forced them to go elsewhere. And it worked out for them. Peyton Manning forced out of Indianapolis, basically. And he won a Super Bowl with Denver. He loves it there. He lives in Colorado. Tom Brady basically forced out of New England, directly or indirectly. He got a legacy winning the Super Bowl at Tampa Bay. He wasn't going to win a Super Bowl at New England if he stayed there. That would have been ludicrous. They wouldn't have had the personnel.
I would not argue that point.
And same with Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. He wouldn't have gotten his second Super Bowl win had he stayed there. And Freddie Freeman, if he was still with Atlanta, he would have been a productive player, but he wouldn't have had this second championship and been World Series MVP. So talk about circumstances, how they can work sometimes.
They can for sure. Drew Ehrlich, who will, by the way, shameless plug, Drew will be my guest co-host on the MLB update today at 3. We'll review our preseason picks, and now that everything's done in the MLB, the winners are in, the award winners are in. We'll see how badly we did with our predictions. I've lost my list, Drew, so I think
Keith, I care about the free agents. I'll be honest about it. I couldn't care less. Manager to year, that I wanted to see Judge get the MVP, him being a Yankee.
Yeah.
And kudos to Francisco Lindor. And I think he came in second in the MVP voting, in the National League behind Ohtani. But why I say kudos to Francisco Lindor, I was the one who said what a terrible deal it was to give him a 10-year contract. But I did say he was going to be good for 5-6 years. He might be very good for 5-6 years, but the last few years will be an albatross. That might still be the case. But you want to know something? It looks like Steve Cohen rolled the dice the right way, that he was right and I was wrong.
in another year, he wins this award. I mean, if Ohtani doesn't go 50-50, I think Lindor, this is a much closer race, obviously. And Lindor might even sneak it out because he was that important. I think he was much more important to the Mets winning than Ohtani winning to the Dodgers. I really do.
Let me ask you, how close is Lindor to being a Hall of Famer? Would he be a Hall of Famer right now? He needs, what does he need, 3-4 more seasons?
I think at least 3 more really good seasons before I'm going to say he's in a Hall of Fame. I mean, the way the Hall of Fame is today, he might be in now. But I think with the standards lowered a bit. But I think he needs a good 3 more seasons before.
And he goes in as a Met or an Indian?
Good question. By the way, they don't get their choice anymore. The MLB decides for them.
Wade Boggs screwed that up.
Yes, he did. He
1 year with Tampa Bay or something. He wanted to go
He sold the pick, yes.
So you wonder what Dave Winfield. Dave Winfield took $1 million reportedly from San Diego to go in as a Padre instead of a Yankee. You kind of wonder that move, but you don't think, when you think of great Yankee Hall of Famers, even if he was in there, Winfield is a Yankee, you don't think of him, as such as one of the legendary Yankee players. They think of Reggie as being that, and Reggie only had 5 years here.
No, right? I mean, I don't even know how Reggie's got a statue and not a statue, but a plaque in legend.
How does he have one over Greg Nettles?
Nettles.
I mean, come
Bernie
on.
Williams, I can name about 10 guys.
Well, Bernie Williams has something in Monument Park.
Does he now?
I think so. I believe so. Yeah, they have something.
It went on so long because there were a lot of
Posada
guys.
has it. Yeah, Roy White, 15 years a Yankee. A couple of them on championship teams. A part of Yankee history, completely snubbed by this organization. He had 15 years to Reggie's 5 years. 3 times he was a Yankee 3 times as long. I mean, but Reggie had that historical World Series. I mean, I'm aware of that and everything going on, but I'm not saying Reggie shouldn't have it. By all means, put him in Monument Park, put Reggie in the Yankee Hall of Fame. The Yankees don't really have a Hall of Fame. It's called like Monument Park, but
yeah, well, that's their Hall.
How Roy White could not be in? Come on.
Yeah, again,
Come on. Greg Nettles not in. Give me a break. Hank Bauer. Dr. Semendinger, we've talked about it, before. Come on.
I agree on all those, especially Nettles.
And Pete Alonso, by becoming a darn free agent here, he, to mess up his chances. Come on.
Before I move on here, Rick, I was talking about great comebacks. Rick brought this up before. Alex Smith definitely was a great comeback story for sure with what happened with his leg. And if you ever saw the video, there was a great 60 Minutes story. If you haven't seen it, go back and find it somewhere because it is a tremendous story. And to see what his leg looked like, amazing. And Rocky Blyer, great story as well as far as coming back. Great one. That's a good pick, Rick. And before I want to talk a little college football before we go, Jack, but I got to find this comment from Rick about the NFL. Because there are 2 guys that are not going to coach the Jets next year. Rex Ryan and Bill Belichick are not coaching the Jets next year.
Belichick hates the Jets. Okay, Rick mentions about Rex Ryan pushing for the job. I'm going to tell you, when you look at the Jet history since they won the Super Bowl, 55 years ago, yeah. Rex Ryan was as successful as any Jet coach. Take him to the AFC Championship game twice. But Rex Ryan's had other opportunities. He went to Buffalo and they didn't do anything there. He's got a loud voice, this and that. And personally, the guy I'd like to see get the Jet job, but I don't know would I give it to him because I don't like his petty lawsuit, Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores could potentially be a great fit. But how do you hire a guy who might start suing you if you have to move on from him at some point?
Yeah, the Jets don't have their coach, Drew.
I'm not sure. Don't be so sure Aaron Rodgers-Drew is going to be there next year. I kind of feel he will because there's no real alternative, but I don't think he's going to carry the same clout. I think he's going to be given a coach who's going to strip Aaron of his power, but still, have a good relationship with him. Aaron Rodgers won't have the same influence, I don't think.
I think there is about a 1%. Yeah, I knew that was a joke, Drew. It's okay. There's about a 1% chance Aaron Rodgers is even on this roster next year.
No. Who's going to quarterback?
Well, regardless, it can't be Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't matter who quarterbacks.
You know what the problem is? Let me tell you what the problem is. The Jets fired Joe Douglas, their GM. And this is in all sports, Keith. Sometimes you could put the best possible team together, but they've got to play well. That's all it is. They've got to play well.
Where's that start? Quarterback.
With the players.
Starts with a quarterback. He said Aaron Rodgers has given the Jets defense the lead. Well, all the Jets defense had to do in 3 games this year is stop the opposition, and those would have been Jet victories. Against New England, he gave them the lead. And then New England takes it down the field. That's not on Aaron Rodgers at the end. That's on the Jet defense. Last week, he gave them the lead. And that's not on him. Against Denver, he got him into field goal range for the game-winning kick. They didn't make it. the toxic environment in the Meadowlands is 100% or 90% because of Aaron Rodgers. You can't have that guy back in your locker room next year. You can't.
The toxic environment isn't in the locker room. It's in the one-loss record.
Could win 3 games. You can win 3 games with the guy you had.
They've been awful. They've been awful. But let's stop hearing about what's in the locker room. I haven't heard anything about players anonymously ripping into Aaron Rodgers. I haven't heard that.
The organization altogether. He was not a good fit for this team or this city, by the way.
He was, because he gave them a certain energy when they got them a certain excitement, and they weren't going to move forward with Zach Wilson as the quarterback. Unfortunately, got hurt last year, wasted year.
And
when we saw that Zach Wilson wasn't the answer. It's easy to say, get rid of this guy, but you have to have a replacement. If the Jets could draft Quinn Ewers, for example, you keep Rodgers, Quinn Ewers is there, or you get rid of Rodgers and Quinn Ewers is your quarterback. Can Quinn Ewers be a good quarterback for the Jets? They'll be able to draft him.
That'd be I think he'd be a good fit there, but Rodgers can't be on the roster. Can't be.
Perhaps, if you get a young quarterback like that, perhaps. Let's see, Keith, there's 6 games left. We were talking before, the games mean something. If the Jets play really well, Rodgers plays really well the rest of the year, Devontae Adams comes to life, they start, let's say they win 4 out of 6. You know, we look at the narrative a little different. Now we're going to start saying, think if we won those games we should have won. Maybe it'll all be deception, but, you know, let's wait and see these 6 games.
I understand, but I can tell you they could win 10 games in 2 years with you playing quarterback, Jack. So that's all I'm saying. We'll see. Real quick, because we're about out of time. We didn't get a chance to get to the NCAA too much, but I'm going to give you 3 picks, and maybe we can make a couple of quick comments. Sponsored by SeatGeeks. Well, actually, it's sponsored by BetUS. Sorry. I never bring that up on my show anymore, but I know Mac does. So the picks are sponsored by BetUS. I'm going to give you Notre Dame and Army over the 44.5 tomorrow in Yankee Stadium. Very interesting game, an important game for Army and Notre Dame, as Notre Dame could be out of the playoff race if they were to lose. And Army, with a surprising victory, would put themselves right in the thick of the playoff race. I like Minnesota at home getting 12 against Penn State, which would put Penn State. If Penn State loses this game, by the way, they'd be in trouble in the playoff. And I'm going to take Arizona State -3 over BYU this week as well. Just a quick note. There are still 21 teams that have a chance to be in this 12-team playoff, and 13 teams control their own destiny. And of those teams, by the way, of the teams that are already in, there's about 8 that could still fall out. So this thing is wide open with 3 weeks to go. A lot of fun. Deion Sanders in Colorado. I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about it, Jack, but you mentioned Deion. Deion's done a great job. Deion's got Colorado controlling their own fate. Won 1 game the year before he got there. I really ripped into this guy before this year, and I was wrong. And now he's got them in a chance to play for a national championship.
And he's got the best quarterback recruit coming in to fill in for Shador next season. I mean,
Deion's not leaving Colorado.
Excuse me?
Deion's not leaving Colorado.
No. Why would he want to leave Colorado? They love him there, and he's going to have a new class of recruits, as well. I mean, he's done a phenomenal job. Kudos to Deion Sanders.
Absolutely. Jack, I had a great time again today filling in for Mac here on the Mac and Jack show. Hopefully Mac will be back soon. He's doing better, as Linda said earlier. Appreciate all you guys coming in and contributing as well. I'll be on in just a minute. Might be a minute later but we'll do our Friday rant show. So get ready to pop in the show and do a rant on whatever you came up with here, guys. You can feel free to sign in and speak your voice. Jack, thank you so much for putting up with me the last couple of weeks. And if we're here next week, we'll do the same.
Thanks, Keith. And best to Mac.
Absolutely. Mac, we're thinking about you, and we hope you're back here next week, actually. And I'm sitting in my normal seat below these 2 guys. So we'll see you guys next week. Enjoy. See you in just a few minutes. Thanks, Jack.